As you know, we're doing the narrative, the story of the Chumash. And we're in Parshas Va'era, which is last week for us. Amongst the issues that we've explored in the recent past is Moshe coming out of no place to become the Jewish Redeemer, his meeting of the Pharaoh and their conversations, his protestation to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Lo mahareyoisa la'om hazeh, why were you mean? Since you sent me, things only got worse. And we also spent some time recently talking about a very, very unique idea which never repeated itself since, which is the notion of leadership that's shared by two people. Rashi says by Yeshua that Hashem says to Moshe, there's only one leader. They can all help him, but there's daber echad ladeir v'leishnei dabarim, there's one Rebbe, one leader. Moshe and Aaron were unique in the fact that they somehow shared leadership. It's a very unusual idea. We're moving on to the next thing, which is setting up the Makkos. We're about to enter into the realm of the Makkos. So we had a class last week, 2 weeks ago actually, whenever I was here last, where the Rebbe said Makkos served three purposes. A, it got us out of Egypt. B, it taught the Egyptians about God, which means it was also meant to be transformative. It was supposed to affect them with the notion of Hashem Echad. And C, the Makkos inspired in the Jewish people an increased understanding of the Eibishter's presence in the world. And the Rebbe explained why all of these three things need to be in the Makkos. So we move on. Today's class, and I'm probably going to finish it in 2 classes, this week and next week, is about the serpent. The first miracle that Hashem tells Moshe to do in front of the Pharaoh is to take a stick and throw it on the ground, and it'll turn into a snake. And then he should grab that snake, and it will turn into a stick again. No, I'm making a mistake. Take a stick and throw it on the ground and become a snake. There is no reference made to doing anything to return that snake into a stick. It's sort of taken for granted. So the Torah tells us Moshe throws a stick on the floor, or Aaron throws a stick on the floor, it becomes a snake, and then the Egyptians throw their sticks on the floor, and they also become snakes. And then it says Aaron's stick swallowed their sticks, which means that without the Torah pointing it out, the stick which became a snake, which is described explicitly in the Chumash, became a stick again, which is not described in the Chumash. It sort of happens by itself. So the issue is, we understand why Hashem performs miracles. Hashem performs miracles to push his weight around, to make us listen to him. We don't want to listen to him, we don't want to heed him, so he forces us. You're not going to listen to me, I'm going to push you around. And Hashem, through Moshe Rabbeinu, performs one miracle after another, we call them the Makot, the plagues, to get the Egyptians to move. But remember, these miracles are not written in some ancient medrash. These miracles are in the Chumash, in Teresh Exile. And we all know what's brought in Svarim, that Ramban brings it with a big shturim, that the Torah is Kod Malayel. The Torah existed before the world existed. So how important could these particular plagues be? That they belong to a timeless Torah. And therefore we have to study the Makkos. Not study the Makkos to understand what happened. That is, relatively speaking, not such a big deal. To study the Makkos to understand why it happened, and why it happened on such an important level that it's preserved forever, for posterity in the Chumash. And we start with a stick turning into a snake. The fact that this happened, and the Torah tells us the story, tells us that there's something about this situation with the stick and the snake and the becoming a stick again, that's a timeless message or a timeless representation of a lakus, which we all need to know about. And that's what's on the table right now. Here we go. Vayashlich Aaron es Mateu. Aaron throws his stick down, lifnei parei v'lifnei avodah, before the Pharaoh and his slaves. Vayhi l'tanin, it becomes a tanin. Who speaks Hebrew? What's a tanin?
A crocodile.
Tanin is a crocodile. A tanin is a dragon.
What?
A tanin is an animal that we don't know what it is. In modern Hebrew, tanin is a dragon. But when it says in the Chumash that when the Eibishter created the world, he created taninim agdoilim, that's not crocodiles.
Oh, like dinosaurs? Okay.
How do we know what they are?
That's a dragon.
Right. What's a dragon?
A reptile.
What's a dragon? A dragon is a creature that doesn't exist. That's what a dragon is.
Now it doesn't exist anymore.
It never existed.
How do you know?
Okay, when the Eibishter created the world, they existed. But if the Torah considers it worthwhile to make specific mention of Taninim Agdoilim, in the story of creation doesn't mention not the elephant, and not the lion, and not the eagle, and not any particular animal or bird or fish, and the Taninim are mentioned specifically. And Rashi says the Eibishter made a couple, a Mr. and a Mrs., and then he shechted the Mrs. so they should have no babies, and salted her fish. We can eat when Mashiach comes to the Taninim. When have babies, there'll be no world. So you want to call them dinosaurs? I call them dragons. The Torah says that you throw the stick to the ground, it becomes a tanin. What does Rashi say? Nochash. Rashi says tanin. Tanin means a dragon, but it was a snake. Now, of course, the way you understand that is very, very simple. Egyptians were into all kinds of mythology. The serpent was a very big part of their worship, but they didn't see the serpent as a serpent. They saw the serpent as a dragon. Yehi l'sanin. They're going to see a nochash, which is a common snake. It's going to represent tanin, their item of worship, which is not a real thing. You understand? So tanin means, I'm using the word dragon for one reason, because it's not a real thing. It's mentioned in the Chumash in the beginning of creation, but that's exactly where it ends, in the beginning of creation. Okay, so let's keep going. And the Egyptian magicians made this balahateim. There's two words in the Chumash. There's balahateim and there's beloteim. With a hey and without a hey. And the word lahat with a hey is translated in Rashi as lachash. They're whispering, they're mutterings. And latehem, without a hey, has a different translation. It doesn't mean coffee. Vayashlichu ish mateu, each man threw down his stick. Vayhi they became dragon. Says Rashi, nochash. Is the pasuk, and the story finishes. Vayiv lamate Aaron's mateisam. Then the stick of Aaron falls up their stick. So clearly, somewhere along the way, these sticks that became snakes became sticks again, and then swallowed the other sticks. And no mention is made of the return. Right? In Parshas Shmos, when Moshe said the Jewish people are not going to trust him, and the Eibush accuses him of speaking Lashon Hara, what does it say there? Come on, help me out. Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Mazeh beyadecha. What are you carrying around in your hands? And Moshe says, Nochash. And Hashem says, throw it on the ground, it'll be a snake. So he throws it on the ground and it becomes a snake, and Moshe is afraid, right? He's a very tough-looking snake, a big guy, an anaconda, right? Or an Egyptian cobra, or a black mamba, or something very exciting. So Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, reach out and grab it by the tail. He grabs it by the tail and it becomes a snake again. So in that case, there's two separate miracles. Miracle A to make the stick into the snake, miracle B to make the snake into the stick. That's not what happens here. Aaron throws it on the ground, the stick becomes a snake, and then somewhere along the line it became a stick again, and then it swallows the other sticks. Okay, turn the page. Bottom of page 51 now. Men gefind, we find, zwei Suge Nisim by the andere Moifsim in Mitzrayim. When you study the miracles that occurs in Egypt, you find two criteria. Two different types. Aleph, you with me? Number one, a nes was at Meshanege ben Azach, a miracle which changes a thing. Von ein teva hamatzias eifat zweite. It changes from one nature into another nature. You know what that means? It goes from being one thing to being something else. If you could make a peach into a pear, what do you have? A pear. So if you wanted to make a pear into a peach, you have to have a second miracle. He gives the examples of the hand of Moshe becoming inflicted with leprosy. Right? Hashem says, put your hand into your bosom, and he takes it out, and the hand is white like snow. What happens next? Hashem says, put it in a second time. V'hinei shava kipsari. Why? Because when Hashem made the nest that Moshe's hand should become inflicted with tzaras, that became natural. A miracle created a change in the nature. Moshe's hand now had tzaras. So you have to have a miracle to undo it. As nache nes, after the miracle, is the tzaras of their hand, given a dover TV, the leprosy he now had, and that was natural. Ve'efen, in such a fashion as had gemus kumen at zweite nes, you have to have a second miracle to mavatas on the tzaras, to break the miracle of tzaras, as zozayin shova kipsari. It's not like Hashem made a nest and then the nest goes away. Hashem made a nest, now there's a new nature. You want to change the nature back to the nature it was before, you have to have a second nest. Base. As the nest, the miracle did not change from one nature to another. In other words, like for example, if you make a peach look like a pear, but it's still a peach. Looks like a pear, tastes like a pear, feels like a pear, smells like a pear. So now all you have to do is allow it to go back to what it naturally is, which is a peach. It's the kind of change in the nature of reality that's been created. Was der Chiddush, that the miracle halt sich jede rega be'efenisi, each second is another nest, which is making it be what it is. Al derech v'sigvan b'kriyas Yamsuf. The example for this is when the sea split. What does it say in the pasuk? That when the sea split, finish the sentence. The wind was blowing, and the wind is blowing and blowing, and the wind stops blowing, the waters fall. So it wasn't a new teva in water that it should stand like a chemes avonim. The wind was keeping it that way. A classic example is the plague of blood. In no place does it say that the plague of blood was reversed. It just washed away. The waters became blood. Even after they became blood, they still were really blood. Water, it just didn't look that way. Every second the miracle caused that the water should look like blood. When the miracle had to stop, Hashem didn't say to Moshe, take your stick and hit the water and the blood will turn to water. It just stopped. From Mayim it automatically became water again because it was water the whole time. So when Hashem tells Moshe to show the Jews this stick turning into a snake, there's two miracles. Turning the stick into a snake, turning the snake into the stick. When Hashem tells Moshe to show the Pharaoh the stick turning into a snake, it's only one miracle. Because in this case, it's not a new Metzias, which is a snake, it's still a stick. It just looks like a snake. 52 now. Pshat would indicate as vudi teira zoknish, that in any case where the teira fails to mention, as says given abazunder pu'ulo v'neis, it was a separate activity and miracle. If mevatel zayin dem friedik and chiddush v'nes, to change the earlier novelty and miracle. So says the Rebbe, this idea that you have many instances in the Chumash where a miracle is performed and you don't see the miracle being unperformed, as their chiddush is batel gevara fazich alei, that the miracle went away by itself. Nachdem vis hat sich geendigt dem tzedech in dem neis. As soon as the miracle was no longer needed, it stopped. Und nit as man hat gedacht onkommen zu noch ein Ness. It did not have a second miracle. So when Hashem makes the stick a snake for Yidden, two miracles. The snake is a stick, the stick is a snake, the snake is a stick. For the Egyptians, even after the stick became a snake, it was still really a stick. So it's going back to stickhood, happened by itself. Okay? And therefore, when we talk about the stick in our parsha, as dasva says steht nit in Pasuk, the fact that the Torah does not describe as their tanin, that the dragon is gevaron tzirika mata, became a stick again, durch ha'pu'ulo the Aaron, through a separate activity of Aaron HaKein, is as their father. The reason for this is, once the miracle happened, from Vayashlech Aaron Vayehilis Saranai, Aaron HaKein threw down the stick, and it became a snake. Was the Eibush that Yehes and Tom Lefnei Pare, Hashem said do in front of the Pharaoh. hat sich der Nes geendigt. The miracle will automatically stop. Und der Tan hat sich mit derich Mehl umgekehrt. And the miracle will turn to its and the stick will return to its earlier condition automatically. Okay? Two types of miracles. So now we're talking about the Tanin. Hashem is going to bring on Egypt 10 plagues. What's the Shalom Aleichem? What does Hashem do before the 10 plagues? One miracle. The miracle of taking the stick and making it into a mata, the stick and making it into a nachash. It returns to being a stick again, but the Torah doesn't specify. Turn to page 54. Here comes the question. Page 54. In dem Dibar Avayel Meishav, Hashem speaks to Meishav, and he tells them, the Pharaoh is going to speak to you layman, and he's going to ask you something. Tnu lachem meifis, provide for yourself a sign. Prove that you have power. You speak on behalf of a powerful God. Show off. Hashem says, "V'amat alad, and tell your brother Aaron, kachas mancha, take your stick, v'ashleich lifnei farei, throw it down in front of the Pharaoh. Hilusan is going to become a snake, a dragon. The two lay no more." So the whole point is that Pare says to Moshe Rabbeinu, Anakin, I don't believe you. I don't think you have any special powers. I don't think you're any kind of prophet. I think you guys are pushed with great imaginations and hallucinations because of the stresses of your life. And so Baba Mai says, show me that it's real. So Hashem says to Moshe, tell Aaron to show the Pharaoh that it's real by making a stick into a snake. Vikumtes, how could it be? As the Noch is given der Meifis vayiv lamate arnes mates. Why does another miracle happen? He takes a stick, he throws it on the floor, it becomes a snake. What happens next? It doesn't say in the Torah, but we assume it became a stick again. Why do we assume it became a stick again? Huh? Because it says in the next pasuk that Aaron's stick swallowed their sticks. And the Rebbe brought in the part of the Mami that we're missing, skipping the whole idea that snakes have a tendency to eat each other, which makes it a king cobra. King cobras eat snakes, by the way. But okay, don't tell nobody. King cobras would eat other king cobras, including their own children. Fantastic idea. It's true. Snakes lay eggs, and they incubate the eggs. And then after the babies are born, they leave them. Cobras leave the eggs a day or two before. Because if they would be there when the eggs hatch, they'd eat them all up. So they can take care of the eggs wonderfully, and the moment they see food, forget about it. It's a teva. So it wouldn't be a miracle if a snake swallows snakes. So it's a stick that's swallowing sticks. But Hashem never said that. What did Hashem say? Throw your stick on the floor. All the rest of the story, where did it come from? The Yidden come to Moshe Rabbeinu and say, the pirates of Moshe Rabbeinu, show me a miracle. The miracle is throwing a stick on the floor. So what's this whole snake, the snake becoming a stick and swallowing the other? So the Rebbe has an answer. I need 2 more minutes, I'm going to let you go. Then pasuk tnu lachem meifis, on this pasuk, do for me a miracle. I skipped. I went down to here, okay, because of time constraints here. Taich Rashi, meifis. What is the meaning of meifis? Ois, a sign. La'idia, to show shesh tzerech or tzarech b'mi shesh leiches, that I should fear you. The Mefarshim Taich in the commentaries explain main tzerech tzarech b'pi shesh leiches, loshen yechelis v'memshala, that you have power. The taste, in other words. Hashem brought 10 makis. I think you got a pretty good idea that those makis really made the case that God's in charge of the world. Yeah? Pretty much. But it wasn't enough. Before the 10 makis, it was a mice with a stick. Hashem desired as al sagdama to the makis. Before the first of the makis, so there should be an 11th miracle. The miracle of the stick. What's the point of the miracle of the stick? To subdue Egypt. What's the point of the miracle of the stick? To get the Jewish people out of Egypt. What's the point of the miracle of the stick? To teach the Jewish people about God? No. To show Pare his power. So to show the possibility and power of Hashem Mitzrayim over Egypt, is an entity unto itself. It's not a punishment. It's not a beating, it's a demonstration. The 10 makis were a beating. 10 makis were a punishment. This is a demonstration. The Fizeh moving, we understand, as the Eis HaMata, this miracle of the stick is nit given stam. It wasn't a miracle, a technical miracle, to bavais nisim, for the Mebish to show Hashem's miracles. Nor zum idea sein dem Tzerach, to demonstrate the need. The point of this miracle was not to intimidate or to frighten or to manipulate or to work over. It was to demonstrate. What? I'm stronger than you. So on the one hand, the miracle didn't have to have a practical purpose at all. But on the other hand, the miracle had to announce, I'm stronger than you. Says the Rebbe, this is only represented when the stick swallows the other sticks. Ubemele is moved mapasha. This is the pshat. As the vayivla mate arnes mates, and the stick of Aaron swallows their sticks. It's nid given a davar nesef. It's not that Hashem tells Moshe to tell Aaron throw a stick on the floor. Yeah. Imagine Moshe and Aaron come to the Pharaoh. Pharaoh says, "Show me your power." So Moshe tells Aaron, "Throw a stick on the floor." And Moshe throws the stick on the floor, and the Egyptian magicians don't throw their sticks on the floor. What happens next? The whole story's messed up, right? It's supposed to happen that they throw their sticks, right? So the Rebbe says Hashem did not affect that Aaron's stick should swallow their sticks because they repeated the miracle. No. Even if they had not repeated the miracle, Aaron's sticks would have swallowed theirs. Nor does guf is given the tzvek from the meifes hamat. It's the point of the miracle of the stick. Weil das hat gewissen keach memshalte shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It showed the power of Hashem. Biz as yeshleim as avihil sanan is given blaze hakdama lazeh. The becoming the time of the introduction. In other words, the Rebbe says like this. We don't understand how in this story we have these two things. We know that Hashem tells Moshe to have Aaron throw a stick on the foot to become a snake. We don't have any reference in that sequence of how the snake becomes a stick again. And we certainly not reference in that sequence of how the snake swallows the other sticks. So why is it in the story? So the Rebbe says, don't you understand? If the snake does not become a stick again, and the stick does not swallow the sticks of the remaining Egyptian kings, the miracle of the snake is basically wasted. Because what's the point of that miracle? To show Hashem's power. Where is Hashem's power shown? In the stick swallowing a stick. Okay, we'll explain it.